think my colleagues will find consolation in the fact that we will be given the opportunity to vote on the floor tomorrow to extend all of the Bush-era tax cuts, including those for the middle class as well. Mr. Zients, as the Director of OMB, Acting Director, I guess, of OMB, what is the law today regarding the Bush tax cuts, what's called tax cuts? How do you interpret the law today?
They're set to expire.
When?
The end of the year.
And do you make any plans in regards to that in your forecasting or your budgeting that there will be more revenue brought into the government because they expire?
Well, the President's plan assumes that there will be no tax increases on families earning less than $250,000.
No, that's not my question. My question is, as the Bush tax cuts are today, what is the law? The law is they will expire at the end of the year. So at the end of the year, what type of forecasting do you do to prepare for that?
Well, the President's plan has the tax cuts not expire for families under $250,000. I don't think all of it.
But that's not the law.
But let me finish.
No, sir. What is the law? They expire, correct? What do you have to do? If it's the law, you have to prepare for those tax cuts expiring, correct?
I don't really understand the intent. What type of preparations are you talking about? I think we all agree that
do you forecast additional revenue coming into the government?
I'm sorry?
Do you forecast additional revenue coming into the government?
No, because the President's policy is to protect those families with less than $250,000.
From any of the tax cuts? No, sir?
Yes, we do. We have money coming into the government under the assumption that the top 2% will not have.
And how much money will that be?
Over a decade, it's about $1 trillion, $850 billion from the expiration of the tax cuts and the estate tax.
So he plans on part of the law not expiring, but sequestration, you're not planning on any of it because somebody has made the statement, and Mr. Carter, I'd like for you to tell me who made the statement that sequestration was never intended to happen. But
I don't think anyone would debate whether sequestration was intended to happen.
But it is the law.
Sequestration was the forcing function to balance deficit reduction. The root cause problem here
is the
refusal of Republicans to acknowledge the top 2% have to pay their fair share. That we do have that $1 trillion.
Mr. Zients, was the President's budget ever voted on in the Senate?
The President's budget itself was not voted on in the Senate.
The President's budget, was it ever voted on in the Senate?
No.
Does it concern you that in a Democratic-controlled Senate by Harry Reid, that Harry Reid would not even bring up the President's budget for a vote?
What concerns me is that we have 5 months to do balanced deficit reduction.
No, that's not. My question is regarding the President.
There's a refusal to acknowledge that the top 2% have to pay their fair share.
Sir, it's my time. Does it concern you and the President that the Democrat-controlled Senate would not, in your words, vote on the proposal that the President of the United States gave to this Congress?
What concerns me is we have 5 months to enact balanced deficit reduction to avoid sequester.
Sir, I have a minute and a half left, and I'm going to ask you again, and I'll ask you until the time runs out. Does it concern the President that Harry Reid and the Democrat Senate would not bring up the President's proposed budget?
What concerns me is that the vast majority of Democrats and Republicans on this committee voted in favor of BCA, which has as a forcing function sequestration, and there has been no progress by Republicans to acknowledge that we need a balanced package that includes further spending cuts and requires the top 2% to pay their fair share.
I would expect you to be political in your comments today, but you have not answered my question. Does it concern you or the President that the President's budget was not voted on in the Democrat-controlled United States Senate?
My energy and my concern is how we use the next 5 months to do balanced deficit reduction.
Can you explain to me then, sir, why you waited until yesterday to put out any type of discussion in regards to what was going to be exempt from what agency? I mean, now you're saying 5. We've actually had 6 months prior to that
well, let's assume that all of us agree that the energy should be put against avoiding the sequester. No one thinks it's good policy. As I've said on multiple occasions, OMB and agencies will be ready in the very unfortunate situation if January 2nd comes and the sequester order needs to be issued.
Thank you. Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for conducting this hearing. I'd just like to, again, walk through a few points with the witnesses. It was almost exactly a year ago that the Budget Control Act was passed. In fact, the administration